On Top Gear this week, action man Tiff Needell in the ultimate 4x4, the armour-plated Hummer. Vicki Butler-Henderson tests the Venturi Atlantique, a supercar from a small French company with big ideas. And Quentin Willson on the Cavalier suspension problem that spells trouble for Vauxhall. Ferrari is now 50 years old, but is there any sign of middle-age spread? Well, none that I've noticed. Saab is also 50, a milestone it's celebrated with the launch of the new 9.5. Even Cosworth is as ancient as Sergeant Pepper.
I've got the invitations to all their parties here. Look, there's Ferrari. We did that one last week. Saab, invitation very importantly. No, they'll just have one glass of wine, then they'll all go and commit suicide. Here we start some dog and duck, few jars. So, Cosworth's 30th. No. What's this? You're called to the Jaguar's 75th anniversary. 75? That is really old. But does it mean they're infirm?
It all began with Bill Lyons making sidecars. Then there was this, and then they won Le Mans, and then the E-Type came along, and he had one. Then they stopped racing, and he bought one. And him, and all the cars broke down, and then the factory went Marxist, and now they're all better again.
There's been a change in attitude, too. I mean, this is the interior of the most recent XJ6. Cosy, isn't it? But there are one or two problems. The glove box. Stupidly small. This seat doesn't go quite far enough back for my liking. And these switches along here, you can't see them. Now, in the past, if you'd whinged to Jaguar about petty things like that, you'd have been lucky to escape from the encounter with light bruising. Not anymore. This is the interior of the brand new XJ. Now, you'll note the glove box is larger. The seat goes further back. The switches have been moved. It's nice. Even though there's a telephone stereo combo, it has a traditional feel. I'm thinking that if this car smoked, it would have a pipe. But in fact, it has two. Big ones.
From the outside, this car has new costume jewellery, new bumpers, new wheels, and underneath there's now a 5-speed automatic gearbox.
So, that's it then. Everything anybody could have complained about has been fixed. Great.
But the story isn't over yet. No one ever complained about having to turn the lights on when it went dark. But in this new model, you don't have to. It happens automatically. No one ever complained about the performance either, but that didn't stop the backroom boys from upping it a bit. Now, what we've got here are some serious sports cars designed to be fast above all else. There's a Mercedes SLK, low, sleek and light, with a supercharger for added zestfulness. There's a Porsche Boxster, a 2-seat mid-engined convertible. Ooh, and there's an Aston Martin DB7, big power under that pretty body. And lining up to take them all on is this. A 4-door saloon, a car that's about as sporty as a pair of Wellingtons. So it's Nike versus Hunter in a mile-long dash for glory. Before it was time to cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war, I simply had to put my gearbox in sport mode and shut down the air conditioning.
I appear to be driving the Energizer Bunny. Brake! Enough, I'll talk! Stop! Now, ordinarily, I have no interest in seeing what's going on under the bonnet of a car, but on this occasion, I shall make an exception. Huh? Wow. Actually, this isn't an XJ6 at all, as you've probably gathered. They've stopped making the six-cylinder engine now, and the V12. All XJs from now on come with a V8.
And this one goes a little further, because it's supercharged. It's the £50,000 XJR, and it's the fastest four-door saloon I've ever driven. It is bonkers fast.
She's taking me places I should never have been.
In bald figures, it develops 370 brake horsepower, roughly the same as a Ferrari 355. I really can't stress this enough. If you're not prepared for the towering poke, the XJR will scare you half to death.
It rockets from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds and is only brought to heel by electronic limiters that cut in at 155. Michael Meacher is gonna love it. My only real complaint is that the old XJR had a rough and readiness that I liked. It was a bit like Brian Ferry, smooth and sophisticated on the outside, but underneath the Armani dinner jacket, it was still a rock star.
This one, though, comes with computer-controlled suspension and the toughness is gone. You can still feel those big tyres scrabbling away, but it's muted. You can't have manual transmission either, and the V8 is much quieter and more refined than the old 4-litre 6.
Now, you probably think that I'm being silly here, that there are bigger fish to fry, that I should be talking about the complete absence of rear legroom, or the tiny, tiny boot. But look, if you made that bigger, you'd lose the styling. And anyway, if you're worried about that sort of thing, you really are getting on. I mean, Jaguar's 75 now, and this runs on Alco Pops. Basically, if you want a lot of space, buy a Field.
Decent car, the last of the Cavaliers. Tough, hardy and sensible value. And the nation likes them a lot. There are over 500,000 of them out there. Vauxhall's workhorse may be one of our firm favourites, but it harbours a dark secret.
And it's this. On the last series of Top Gear, you heard me go on about front suspension control arms on certain Cavaliers, Calibras and Astras, how they can suddenly shear to metal corrosion and fatigue, and how a break can spell disaster. Well, viewers have been contacting us with some pretty close shaves.
As I started to brake towards a traffic island, the steering wheel snatched out of my hand and went round towards the right, then the car just slid towards the central reservation.
Touched the brakes when I heard a bang come from the front end. Car veered across the other side of the road.
The car in front braked quite hard. I followed suit, and then suddenly there was a big bang and we came to a stop very violently.
I braked for a roundabout and there was this almighty bang.
Smoke filled the car. It's quite horrendous.
I got out of the car and looked and saw that the front wheel was pushed into the wing.
Tried to move the car off slowly, but it wouldn't move at all.
I was horrified to see the wheel had actually fallen off.
The front wheel had actually been forced back in towards the bulkhead.
The wishbone had broken, and it had also pulled the drive shaft out and damaged the bush at the end of the anti-roll bar.
The consequences could have been disastrous.
With 3 children in the back as well, goodness knows what might have happened, really.
We got back into the car, limped around the island about 100 yards to the place where I actually bought the vehicle. As soon as the chap saw it there, he knew exactly what the fault was, as he'd had several similar complaints within about the last 12 months or so.
Now, you might think these stories are exceptional, but we have had no less than 20 people tell us of their near misses and accidents. And we've also had many, many more write in to tell us of their broken control arms, but also to express their concern at the way Vauxhall have handled their inquiries. And to be perfectly frank, we're a bit confused. Because when we spoke to Vauxhall back in May, they told Top Gear and Vauxhall customers that these control arms have no manufacturing or material defect. But since then, they've examined the broken arm we used in our original programme, plus a number of others. We've seen internal documents that state that control arms have failed due to poor riveting, and that the origin of the control arm should be investigated because it's clearly not up to the specification of approved Vauxhall suppliers. They've told the Department of Transport that someone is copying their part. In other words, Vauxhall dealers have been inadvertently fitting fake control arms. So Vauxhall seem to have got to the nub of the problem, and they're even contemplating taking legal action against the suppliers of the bogus control arms. But the bit that worries me here most of all is that they've yet to tell the people who matter most, their customers, people who are driving round in Cavaliers, Calibras and Astras. In fact, while we were filming this, we rang a big Vauxhall garage in London, and they still insisted that the problem with control arms is ham-fisted jacking with a trolley jack. So what this means is that out there are Cavaliers, Astras, Calibras merrily running around with bits of their front suspension that are not up to Vauxhall standards that could be dangerous. Now, I don't think that is a particularly good state of affairs. Vauxhall in their report also state, as Top Gear has maintained all along, that the reason these control arms are breaking is because of bending and metal fatigue. So as far as I'm concerned, this is one problem that isn't going to evaporate overnight. Because the dirigible size question is, just how many of these counterfeit control arms are around, and how did they get into the hands of Vauxhall dealers in the first place?
This is actually an industry-wide problem. This fake part was sold as an original manufacturer in original packaging, so it's extremely difficult to detect that it wasn't the original part. In this case, we are sure that it's been going on for some years, and there must be probably a few hundred out there, but the manufacturer who we've contacted assures us that this must be a one-off, but we're not leaving it at that. We're doing extensive investigations and testing of this part. At the moment, we don't know how many there might be.
And what are Vauxhall going to do about it?
We are very concerned about owners of Vauxhall cars who may have got one of these parts fitted, perhaps after a front accident. So what we have done, now we've discovered it, we have made up this picture that shows the difference between our genuine part and the fake part, and we've sent this to all our Vauxhall dealers to make sure that they know how to check between a fake part and a genuine part. We are also going to distribute this to all independent garages in the country, because we don't know where these parts may have got to.
Now, there must be a lot of very worried Calibra, Cavalier and Astra owners out there. What do you recommend they should do?
Well, I would recommend that if they believe that their car may have been fitted with a control arm at any time in the past, if it was fitted at a Vauxhall garage, then they should contact that Vauxhall garage, and we would be very happy to check whether or not that is a genuine part. The likelihood is, though, that many of these parts have gone into the independent trade, and I would recommend that the customers contact their normal service operation to see whether or not they have fitted the wrong part. And as I said, we will have advised them how to identify the fake part versus the genuine part.
And what about people who have already paid out to have replacement control arms fitted at Vauxhall dealers and have had these fake ones fitted? Are they going to be reimbursed?
Well, if they've had them fitted at a non-Vauxhall garage, then I'm afraid that's not something we would reimburse. However, if this part has got into the Vauxhall franchise somehow and they've had it fitted at a Vauxhall dealership, I'm sure that dealership will change it free of charge.
Now, I could rant on red-faced about recalls and why we have to make all this fuss in the first place, but I won't, because the most important thing here is your safety. So the bottom line is, if you own a Cavalier made between 88 and 92, a Calibra made between 90 and 92, or an Astra of 92 to 93 vintage, please, please, please get those front control arms checked.
If you had £70,000 to spend on a car, you'd have a pretty mouth-watering choice from the upper class of the market. For sporting, you could choose between a Porsche 911 or a Honda NSX. The cruisers could have an S500 Merc or a 750i BMW. Or you could have a Hummer. AM General's off-road warhorse has been softened up a bit and is now imported to Britain as the ultimate off-roader for the Action Man.
I love working for Uncle Sam. I love working for Uncle Sam.
The Hummer is based on the military Humvee, which was one of Storming Norman's star turns in the Gulf War. Since its launch, over 7,000 Hummers have found homes in the States, including those of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis. But as I don't own 300 acres of Cotswold countryside, I can only dream of going off-road. For me, I'm more likely to be stuck in town. And when you are, the Hummer is very civilised. I've got power steering, power brakes, automatic 4-speed, air conditioning, no radio, mind you, but never mind. In fact, the only real problem is the sheer size of the machine. It's 2 feet wider than an average saloon car and 6 inches narrower than a London bus. As a result, you're forever squeezing past people and then looking in your rear view mirror to check you haven't gouged the side out of their car. Sorry. 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 But the biggest surprise on board is the space, or lack of it. This centre console seems to take up the entire cabin. There are some nice little gadgets like a drinks holder and a picnic table at the back. But otherwise, all you get is 4 seats. Of course, one of the biggest nightmares is parking. And even if you do find a space, you've got no chance of getting in it. Mind you, the Hummer has an answer.
Our lips shouldn't touch. Move over, darling. I like it too much. Move over, darling. That gleam in your eyes is no big surprise anymore. 'Cause you fooled me before.
With room made on the end of the line, there's plenty of space to park your Hummer and allow the passers-by to admire its elegant lines.
Too weak to fight it somehow. 'Cause I want you right now.
Whichever way you look at it, the Hummer is massive and it makes the opposition look like it comes from Toy Town. Now, the reason why there isn't much space inside is because they've shoved all the transmission and prop shafts up into the cabin to give you 16 inches ground clearance. So, at least you should be able to get over the biggest sleeping policeman in town. Impressed so far? Well, how about this? If you do manage to get off-road and muddy conditions demand lower tyre pressures to improve traction, you simply press a button to deflate your tyres, and there's an onboard compressor to pump them up again. Right, time to head out of town.
Walk tall.
A chance to open up the 6.5-litre turbo diesel and let the 190 horsepower rip loose. Except with about 3.5 tons to push forward, it feels about as powerful as a Fiat Cinquecento and gets from 0 to 60 even slower, with a maximum speed of only 80 miles an hour. Right, time for the real test. Getting the Hummer off-road. Made it, but it'll never go in that garage. Darling, we're home. Ah, if only.
Venturi stuff, baby.
Being a new girl on Top Gear, I was expecting to start at the bottom, while the boys were out driving very fast, very expensive totty magnets. Well, you know what? Girls like to drive fast too. This is the Venturi Atlantique. It's 3 litres, it's V6, it's turbocharged. And it's very naughty.
To justify my love, hoping, praying for you to justify my love.
281 brake horsepower. Yes, please. Venturi is a small French company with a strong racing pedigree. It builds just 250 of these fiberglass-bodied Atlantiques each year. And when you're only making such a small number, the car has to be successful. It costs £60,000. You could buy a nice little place in Normandy for that. So, what do you get for your money?
I don't want to be your mother.
Turbo nutters will love this. I do. Put your foot down and the turbo spins into action, thrusting you forward at a gigglesome pace. That noise, I tell you, is so intoxicating. It's right behind your ear. It's just wonderful. The steering's really heavy at parking, but at speed it becomes spot on, which is exactly what you need, so you always know what's going on underneath. The Venturi could be seen as a poor man's Ferrari, but that's probably being a bit unfair. OK, you don't get a badge with a horse on it, but you do get a gorgeous-looking car which is crying out to be driven hard, and it's very eager to please. Oh, ho, ho! Oh, I could do this all day. Eat your heart out, Tiff. Inside, the car has a distinctly aristocratic air. But if you feel that a wood panel dash is all a bit sedate and gentlemanly for a car that can top 170 miles an hour and go from 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds, then you can opt for a much tartier carbon fibre look. The gearbox is nice too, even though it's got a long throw for a car of this type. It's very, very direct.
We can fly.
With every inch of this car screaming speed and sophistication, I find it unbelievable that they haven't fitted airbags. And while I'm at it, I want to get niggly. The doors don't actually fit flush when they're shut. And when they are shut, you can't adjust the seat backs. And this big thing gets right in your way at roundabouts and you can't see what's coming. Build quality and reliability are without doubt the major question marks over the Atlantique. Previous Venturis haven't always stood up to the rigours of everyday life when thrown onto the streets to fend for themselves. And there isn't a dealership on every street corner, so when things go wrong, and it seems likely they could, you'll need deep pockets and a good road atlas. So, get a rich friend to buy one, and then just borrow it every now and then. Take it to a friendly race circuit, and I promise that you'll have a great time. But if you're too chicken to venture out in a Venturi, try this for size. Can I interest you in the new 6-speed Honda NSX? Unlike Venturi, Honda has a reputation for reliability, which has won it more OAP fans than Jimmy Young. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the NSX is no bath chair. It's very fast, very sexy, and definitely X-rated. The most wonderful thing about this car is that it behaves like a pussycat around town, never complaining or giving you grief when you're just tootling along. But then when you need to pick up some speed, or you want to pin your passengers into the plush leather seats, it's got all the venom you need. This £70,000 rascal wants to be your friend. You don't need 10 years racing experience to handle it. Point it at a corner and it excels. beautifully balanced with enough grunt to see you clear in moments. But if you know what you're doing, switch off the traction control and let it rip. Another fantastic thing about this car is its VTEC engine. Get it over about 5,000 revs and it suddenly comes into its own and hits you with a massive roar. The dash is a zillion miles away from the Civic, though there's too much to take in really with all the dials and gadgets. However, the gear lever has a wonderful short throw to it, and the nose of the car is so squashed that I feel like I'm right up in the screen and in the action. The all-aluminium Honda is very similar in performance to the Venturi, a top speed of just over 170 miles an hour and 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. So, a stonkingly fast car that you can drive in complete comfort sounds perfect, but therein lies the problem. This is a high-performance car, and I want to be involved. Trouble is, it's just too civilized. The steering is a little remote, and the ride isn't hard enough. I want to feel the speed, but it just doesn't happen. So, you've got £70,000 to spend. Lucky you. If you rule by your head, take the NSX. It's extremely reliable, phenomenally fast, and even your granny can drive it around town. But if you want to set your pants on fire, take the Venturi. You'll even have 10 grand left to buy your bloke a little run around for the shopping.
Next week, a new large Saab to complement the other large Saabs. Bubble Trouble, the mobile goldfish bowl, is making a comeback and taking the air out of airbags.
Well, these are some days we're living in today. C'est la vie, I say.